Welcome back to Disc and Ball's Golf Channel, where I have a soggy chair. Probably soon a soggy butt, but we're doing another in the bag. This is going to be for MA1 Advanced Edition. Won a couple tournaments since the last in the bag. But yeah, my good friend Ricky Valdez was asking about it. Hey, what are you throwing? What are you doing? Especially, it's been a windy year in Corpus, so things have changed. I've started throwing farther and my bag has shifted a little bit because of that. So let's get started. Starting out, putters. I have, the Anode is my main go-to putter. Reliable in the wind, but doesn't tend to turn over the way the Hunter will sometimes. I have two different ones. I've got the Proton Soft. I actually found Parked It. I was really thrilled to find the Soft because I like the grip, and sometimes when it's hot and humid, it feels more comfortable or more confident in my hand than the standard Electron Soft. Electron Soft is a little stiffer. They both fly pretty much the same, full power. The Stokely K3 Berg, I like it for putting in heavy wind. It doesn't tend to want to dump over, and it will kind of fade out at the end, which is something I have to be aware of, because if I get it on hyzer in a right to left, it's still going to dump pretty hard to the left. So doesn't fly far on full power, as you can see from the overhead. Last but absolutely not least, first putter I ever had, Gravity Hunter. Very understable, super puddle topped, crazy puddle topped, and very understable. If you get over on it, it's going right. It does glide really far because of that. 2400 are the numbers, but it doesn't behave that way. But it's this one is probably like -2, like 24 -2 0 or something. It doesn't try to come back. The overhead, it comes back a little bit because it you know, it's downwind. All these throws were on like 6 to 9 mile per hour, almost straight downwind, like tailwind. They're going to fly more stably than they actually are, just to an extent. Like, I guess for most people that'd be dramatic, but 6 to 9 miles an hour in Corpus is like a mostly calm day. That concludes the putting putters. My main approach disc, the Prodigy 400A2. It's replaced the Harp. It's more reliable forehand wise. Like, I'd stack and just full rip and it'll go flat and not want to turn over, which that's absolutely key. This has become a staple upshot disc. If you look at my last Riverside video, all those ranges where there's a hyzer line, it's going the direction you think it is no matter what. Going to my mids, we have the Hex, the Neutron Hex, got it from Al. It hasn't replaced my Claymore, but it's kind of slid into the more stable to finishing left thing as my Claymore has kind of beaten in. As the Claymore has beaten in, it's gotten a little bit to the point where it'll turn over a little, or it'll ride a little farther right than I'm used to. It's fine, it's still a very straight disc downwind, as you can see, but when you get into a headwind, it tends to go a little bit to the right, and so that's where the Hex kind of shines. And they're both straight flying disc. It's one of those ones where you control the angle rather than the disc, but the Hex will sometimes turn over, which is why we have the Neutron Deflector. It is a monster. It still is a monster. It still outperforms all the other mid-ranges from the video that I did as far as overstability. I gotta say, I did like the Justice. It was, you know, not gonna turn over, but still fought out. But the Deflector is just more reliable, and so, you know, love the Deflector. It's mostly, the Deflector is definitely, I throw more forehand than backhand. It's more a power forehand where if I can't trust the A2, I'm going with the Deflector. The Wizard, I've done a video on this. Very straight flyer, very reliable, just goes straight very reliably. Next up is the Underworld. It is understable roller or standstill type disc. It's kind of crazy how you can get it to flex out, just stand still ripping on it, which pretty cool. But definitely understable, definitely going right on the backhand. The Champion Leopard 3 continues to be a workhorse straight fairway. This one's 174 grams. The overhead says it all, straight. Star Halo Destroyer. Calvin Heimberg. Got this one from Andy. Thanks, Andy. And it's my forehand go-to for just reliability. Doesn't turn over in the wind. I can just rip on it. Sometimes I get over it. It's starting to beat in. I had a tournament in Rockport that was actually, that was the determining tournament where I moved up to intermediate. So it got a little beat up there, and I noticed that it started to kind of hold an ante line a little bit longer than it used to. Great disc. Might need to slide it into a slightly lower stability. The VIP Destiny is just a downwind bomber, as you can see. It's good. It tends to want to come back in a headwind or in a tailwind. In a headwind, mostly a liability. I mean, you can put it on hyzer and watch it like just glide right, but still, that's one that if there's no wind, I can still send it, which is pretty awesome. Ballista Pro is my backhand wind bomber. If I need to go deep or try and get one long in a headwind, I'll probably put it on a little bit of hyzer and just let it flip over, and it'll ride a little bit and then tend to finish. Unless I throw it low into the ground, it's not going to turn over all the way, at least with my current backhand power. Also, forehand, I've learned, I can stack, rip it on the right angle, and let it ride the wind a little bit, much more than the Destroyer can do. So pretty cool. Definitely have begun to lean on that, especially in the wind out here. The ESP Machete has filled my Firebird slot. It is crazy overstable. I can throw it as hard as I want forehand, and it's going to the right. It's not as it glides a little more than the deflector, for example, but it's definitely going. Backhand is going left, forehand is going right, and it's reliable. So that's the key. That's the reason it replaced the Firebird. Was the Firebirds I kept getting were turning over a little bit, and I was like, I can't have a disc in that slot that turns over in the wind. Stiletto has slid down a slot in my bag. It used to be my forehand power disc when, like, the most overstable, most whatever, like, throw it however I want, it's going right. It has now gone to being like still overstable, still doesn't turn over, but it'll ride a bit flat, which kind of, now that I know that it'll ride flat, I can account for it. But the first time it happened was in a tournament, and all of a sudden it was flat for 320 feet and over through the fairway, over some bushes, off into the distance. Super infuriating, and that's why it got replaced, and it got replaced by the Nuke OS, Z-Line Nuke OS. Very stiff, very overstable. This has become the, throw it as hard as I want, especially on a hole where, I don't want to overthrow the fairway, but I still want to just throw a full power shot. The Nuke OS, throw it straight, it goes right. Goes right, and not particularly far, maybe 260-ish feet. The Opto River. This is something I put in my bag after Foxtrot because the foliage was completely blocking the wind. My straightest disc was my Champion Leopard 3, but it's a touch too stable, and so it tended to finish a bit left, and I needed something that would finish a tiny bit right, and this is one notch below the Leopard 3, so a little bit less stable, but still very straight flying. Lots of glide too. It tends to go pretty well, and then still a little bit toward the understable side. This is one of the first discs I dyed, and I wanted to make like a Star Halo type effect. It is a Star Valkyrie. It's only 168 grams, or so it says. But it's been, it wasn't in my bag for a little while. As I've gained more power, it's kind of been one of those flippy, glidey guys, and it's like, I'd say, a touch less stable than the Explorer. It tends to want to, the Explorer will tend to want to stay flat. The Valkyrie will turn over a bit, but still want to fight out. That's pretty nice. Speaking of Explorer, I've lost my gold Explorer. If anyone finds it, it's on 14 at gold. Near the basket, I threw a little forehand roller and it rolled somewhere. I was kind of like right where it funnels together. So if you find that, reward, bounty, $20, $30, maybe more. But it's been replaced with this Opto Explorer, which doesn't seem as stable. I've thrown it a few times, especially in a tournament, and it's gone a little right, and I was like, you're an Explorer, why are you going right? That's obnoxious. Like, should be going straight, and then straight, and then straight, and then finish a little left at the end, as you can see. Metal Flake Katana. It's kind of a weird one. It's a little bit, it's more stable than the Destiny, but it's finishes harder. Like it'll turn over, but it will finish a little bit more aggressively than the Destiny. Kind of niche in a headwind. In a tailwind, it will ride and fight out pretty firmly. So then there's the Blowfly. Now the Blowfly lost a little bit of its convenience due to a PDJ ruling that says you can't fold it in on itself anymore, which limits the usefulness, like because you could crumple it together and then throw it like a ball. In the wind on elevated baskets, you play basketball. However, because of its flexibility, it's a really fun PDGA legal catch disc, and I like to throw it into the sky and play, like, sort of max time aloft. I'm not timing it or anything, but like, a good way to warm up, run, catch it, and you can pretty much, unlike other discs, throw it as hard as you want into your hand and it doesn't hurt. Next up are the flex slots, where depending on weather, depending on wind, I will swap them out. This is a Pro Katana, about 171 grams, probably a little bit less than that, given the damage it's taken. However, power bomber type discs, or like crazy understable, will tend to kind of fight out. But like in a tailwind, if it's a fucking mosquito, if it's a powerful enough tailwind, you can just rip this thing, it'll turn over, it'll ride and ride and ride. But because of the understability, completely unthrowable in a headwind, and so very niche, very weather dependent. However, because it does dump over, you can get it on a roller angle. The angle that the VIP would, or that the Underworld would get on, because of the understability, it tends to want to turn over and go right. This one has that little stability, the fade at the end, that it'll want to stay on edge. Kind of nifty, kind of not sometimes. I'm sure I got some footage of it doing very rolly things in the completely wrong direction. And then lastly, Star Strike. Another one of those discs. It's a little older. It's 171 grams. In wind, it'll turn over and ride and ride and ride, and it doesn't come back generally. Like in wind, it just holds over to the right. Great if you need a backhand long left to right shot. Less great if you want it to have some semblance of like finish, which is why it kind of gets swapped out. The two things that I tend to swap it out with are the Bobcat and the ESP Nuke, which still learning the Nuke. I like the feel of it. I liked the way it was flying. Haven't tinkered with it a lot, nearly as much as I want to since seasoning it to perfection. But the Bobcat is a solidly left to right disc. I like it more than the Verdict because it glides less. The Verdict likes to stay flat and not finish in the wind. Super obnoxious. Bobcat doesn't have that issue. It glides flat and it finishes, which is fantastic. Exactly what I'm looking for in an overstable but more serviceable mid-range than the deflector, for example. Very awesome discs. I like mint discs. I wish I had more stuff that I could throw of theirs that like suited stuff I don't already have in my bag. So my release point on all those flights was not optimal. So I did adjust for launch line, I guess. Launch line, not so much for nose angle. The River, for example, was a little bit nose up, but adjusting for the initial launch line, I think that gives a good perspective of what these discs do. Additionally, like I said, it's all going to be a little bit more skewed toward the overstable because of the tailwind. Get them in a headwind and everything shifts down toward the bottom of the screen. Yeah, so let me know if you like that format for the overhead. I think that's going to be my go-to for in the bag because I think it probably demonstrates the best way with the flight lines, like, hey, this is what this disc is doing. And to me, I think that's a lot of fun. I think it kind of helps visualize it a little better than a straight on, you know, from behind type throw. So as always, thank you for watching, and hopefully I see you on the course.